Welcome to the Probate Podcast, where we talk about all the things you didn't know you need to know about probate. My name is Sherri Lund, and I'm so glad that you're here. I want you to understand the process and to know what to expect because it's going to make things easier and it's going to save you money. And I'm here to show you how. Hello, this is Sherri Lund with the Probate Podcast, and I'm glad to have Matt Meredith here as my guest. Matt is an attorney here in the Spring, Texas area and well accomplished in the financial field. And so I'm excited to introduce you to Matt today. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Sarah. Good to see you.
So let me tell you a bit about Matt. Matt's an attorney and a managing member of the law office of Robert M. Meredith Law Firm in Spring, Texas. He concentrates on estate planning, business law, probate, tax, and more. Matt's a certified financial planner, practitioner, and a licensed attorney in the state of Texas. Matt grew up in Louisiana. And is LSU on your field at all?
Oh, yeah, LSU.
Yes. And moved to Houston in 2002, and he attended the University of Houston. After graduating from U of H, Matt became a certified financial planner. In 2018, Matt went back to school to the South Texas College of Law to serve his clients with matters that require a law license outside of the normal scope of financial planners, financial advisors. So now Matt assists his clients in financial and legal matters. He eases the stress and uncertainty about their financial future. He can draft the necessary legal documents that coincide with their financial and estate plans. And Matt assists in business formation, asset protection, probate, tax law, and more. Matt's a certified mediator in the state of Texas and has over 15 years of experience as an independent financial advisor. Outside of work, Matt is an avid outdoorsman. He loves his coffee, and he enjoys spending time with his wife, Luz, and their 2 dogs. Matt volunteers at the South Texas College of Law Probate Clinic and the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic, where he continues to learn new aspects of an ever-changing legal field. So you can see Matt is a great resource here for the people in the greater Houston area. So again, Matt, thanks for joining me. Hey, Matt, I was thinking, I've got my coffee here too. So I was thinking if I were to come across you and Luz, we just met up on a Sunday park. We were playing with the dogs in the park. And I said, hey, Matt, tell me a little bit about you as a person. How would you introduce yourself to just the average person on the street?
On the business side or on the personal side? Who am I? I'm a Louisiana boy by nature, Texas by heart, and love to be outdoors. So you probably see me often with the dogs. My wife is an engineer who is also a big outdoor woman. And we really enjoy kind of getting out, socializing, meeting people. You'd probably meet us at the dog park. And when you own businesses, your social life also revolves around those businesses. So a lot of our time is spent enjoying life while also pushing these businesses.
Yeah.
So we do quite a bit of networking events, quite a bit of getting out and talking about kind of what we do. But I like to think we're down to earth and cordial and from time to time funny.
Yeah.
It's all the time.
Yeah, I can attest to all of that. So what's interesting to me about you, and we've talked about it before, is you were a financial advisor, a really good one for a long time, still are, but you're also an attorney. So tell me about that process. What was it that the light bulb went off and thought, why not?
So started the financial industry in 2005. I got licensed under Series 7 and I moved around several different locations, working back office, brokerage, trading, things like that, and got into more financial advising after the 2008, 2009 recession. And from there, I worked with clients, everyday typical clients, different size investment portfolios, looking for retirement, looking for goal-based planning. Worked for several large companies, ended up getting my CFP certification, Certified Financial Planner. And one of the issues I had after getting that is I knew a lot of things that regular financial advisors aren't supposed to talk to their clients with. For example, you don't give tax advice, you don't give legal advice. You may know it, but you're not that professional to do it. And as I sat there thinking, this is an ever-changing industry, the financial industry. It's always changing. You always got to be one step ahead of it. And my thought was, in the future, people are going to want somebody who can do more than just invest their money. who can do more
Right.
than just pick mutual fund. Yeah. And to me, that's where the industry seemed to be going was, hey, everything's going to be, modern portfolio theory. It's all based on picking some mutual funds and long-term goal investing. Well, that kind of bothered me because while it's a lucrative career, you can do quite a lot with it. I wanted more. And so I thought to myself, is there a way that I can come out and help my clients and other needs to go beyond the scope of the financial advisor? And my wife and I were talking about it, and it became, well, I think I'm going to go to law school. And she kind of looked at me like, oh, you're crazy. And so I ended up going to law school. And in law school, at South Texas College of Law, great school. I mostly focused in tax law with a little bit of estate planning and really got a good understanding of taxes and how they affect everything on top of the estate planning aspects. And so now what I do, and it has to be done under two separate businesses, but I can do the financial planning, but asset management, investment management, but I also have the law office of Robert M. Meredith. And with that, I can go and do the real estate planning, the drafting of documents. I can do things like probate. I can do things like business formation. And so the whole goal was I wanted that one-stop shop, even though it's two separate businesses. It's the one person now who oversees all the financial matters and can help you make decisions in all of your financial affairs instead of being told, oh, I can't tell you what your taxes are going to do, because I'm not a CPA or I'm not a tax lawyer. That to me is the worst answer to give a client. Now it becomes, let me switch hats real quick and let's talk about how we can help you out in this way.
Right. I see that as being a real asset and being one person that's a fiduciary in both positions, that people can trust you with their questions and their answers, and everything is confidential and they can really lean into you and what you have to offer. So I think that's really, really valuable. Tell me what excites you most about what you can do with these two combined roles.
So what I like about it is that there's a trust factor that is really interesting, because when you're helping somebody with their financial aspects, their accounts, managing their money, there's trust there. You don't just hand millions of dollars to somebody without trusting them. And so it's then a natural procession going into, hey, let me look at your will. Oh, you don't have a will. Okay, well, we need to start talking about this because you have all these assets. How is this going to distribute at your death?
Right.
Another good aspect is a lot of clients, finance is finance. It covers such a broad range from not just your asset management, but your businesses, how is your trust managed? How are your children involved in your account? All of this is under the same umbrella.
Right.
And to go and have to explain this over and over again to multiple people, it just becomes this nightmare. I mean, on top of that, they're each charging you their full fee.
That's
So
true.
you're paying quite a bit more. The same person sitting in front of you, we know how your assets are working. We know how your estate plan is working. We know how your business is doing. We have a succession plan. We are protected. We're looking at how all of your taxes work with all these companies, because we know all your companies, because I help open brokerage accounts for all of them and I've helped set them all up. It becomes, and you've heard me put it, it's a right-hand man for people in their businesses where, okay, this is the guy I trust. This is the guy who understands it. And when I have an issue with needing money, or I have an issue with the IRS calling up saying, hey, we disagree with this deduction, it's one phone call to one person who I can't do everything. If I don't understand how to do it, I
Right.
have all these lawyer friends now who I do call and say, hey, I need
Yeah.
your help on this. And so it really makes it simplified in an organic way that just everything moves forward together. There's no
Mhm.
longer competition between your tax guy and your investment advisor guy and your attorney. It's kind of the same person. And so it moves forward with it.
Yeah. So who would you say your typical client is? Is it a business owner, a CEO, executive kind of person, or do you work with the average person also?
I love working with the average person, but I also like the complexities that come with more complex individuals and those who have businesses and things like that. Everybody needs somebody that they can trust to handle their affairs. And
Right.
and like to think that's the type of person I am. And so whether or not it's just a small account that's been sitting there for your retirement, you're not happy with the person who's in charge of it, they never call you, or it's a blended family estate plan that you're trying to put together and you need help with that. Simple wills are fantastic when it's just going straight to your spouse and then to your children. But I also like the complexities of, hey, we came together 15 years ago. We have kids from different marriages before. How do we make sure that everything goes according to plan? So from the simpleton to the complex business connoisseur, it's all important to me.
It is. My heart, I know that you know this because we've talked about my heart in doing what I do and in creating this podcast, which was never on my list of things to do. But my heart is to save people money, is to reduce the stress and the overwhelm, to encourage them to plan because that's efficient, that saves them money, but it also helps their beneficiaries, their heirs, their loved ones to not have the stress and the overwhelm after they're gone. But then the fourth thing that I would say is that I really want the beneficiaries to take advantage of this planning. Now I've inherited this stuff. So how can I make sure that it is also protected? Because there's a big wealth shift from the people that are the baby boomers and the generation before that. And it's passing down to their children and grandchildren. And so they have opportunities now with this wealth that is being passed down. So that's another thing that I hope this podcast does in encouraging people to make these plans is to protect their wealth and to invest it and to manage it so that it grows. And I know that you can help them with that. So one thing that I love about these interviews that I do is that with each one, I pick a myth that we can bust. And the one that I want to talk about with you is that they're just too expensive. So for those that are saying it's too expensive, I can just do it myself or whatever. What would you have to say about the person who uses those excuses?
I liken it to, and I used to give this example to people all the time. I don't walk into a surgery center and say staple and start cutting myself open. I won't last long. It just doesn't work that way. I'm not trained to do that. And everybody loves to save money, but there comes certain things where you should spend money on. A good example is brakes on your car. Don't buy the cheap brakes and don't do it yourself if you don't know what you're doing. When you look at estate planning, the whole point of it is you worked your whole life building something and you created this empire unto yourself. And you're just going to let it kind of go whichever way it wants. And some people are okay with that. Personally, I'm not the type that is. And for a lot of people, saving a little bit of money really doesn't make their dream come true. It becomes more along the lines of there's holes in it. And if you know how wills work and you know the probate process and you see these holes, you can start poking at them and making them bigger and bigger and bigger to where one person's estate is now under fire because they didn't do stuff to protect it the way they wanted. Or another example is they didn't know what happens in a probate process. And so they just said, hey, I'll be dead. I'm not going to spend a lot of money on this because I'll be dead and I won't care. Well, okay, that's true. But your family will still be here, and they might not be too happy that you've left them a major mess to clean up. And that house that was supposed to go to maybe your children is now, because X amount of time has passed, has a lot more people involved in it than before. So you're going to try to do, probate of this real estate, amendment of title, something like that. Well, now instead of just a simple transfer, you've got all these people involved. And so you didn't want to pay a lot of money in the estate planning aspects where we could have done this properly. Now your estate is going to pay a whole lot of money to get this taken care of in probate. And that's not even counting if it's a contested probate of the will or without a will. It's just like anything else in your life. There's a cheap way of doing it that sometimes works. We call it the duct tape route. Or there's the do it right. It doesn't mean doing it right will cost you a fortune. You can always find it at a good price, but the more complex it is, expect to spend some time and money on it.
Yeah, so I know you can't give specifics and every case is different, but just in a ballpark figure, how much money are we talking about for the average person's will, for just a basic will?
It will vary. If it's a very simple will, I've seen them go for a couple $100. If it's more complex and you're getting different types of directives and power of attorney, it's a lot of lawyers add into it. It can be quite a bit more. It's so hard to pin down a price because every lawyer charges different fees.
Sure.
Everybody kind of does it at a different. So I really can't give you anything on that aspect, but it's reasonable.
Right.
It's always reasonable and don't always have to pay it all at once.
That's a good
A
point.
lot of lawyers will allow payment plans so that you can get this taken care of. And I liken an estate plan to a financial plan. It's knowing where you're going. We're
Mhm.
not winging it anymore. I tell people all the time, winging it is something you do on a road trip.
Yeah.
It's not something you do when it comes to your own money or your
Right.
own assets and your own debts. Plan it out. It's uncomfortable, but you don't have to dwell on it for 40 years. You do it once, you're good, and then you review it once in a while, and that's it. And then you're secure, your family's secure. That makes it easier on everybody.
Right. So we're talking maybe less than $2,000 for the average will, and being able to pay that over time is a good thing to think about. One of the things you mentioned was holes, and I want to point out that not every probate attorney does all the parts of probate. So some don't do business, some don't do litigation where they handle contested things in the courtroom. Some just do the transactional things. They're relational and they work that out. If I was to go to Office Depot and download a form from whatever the online place is and fill out my own will, there are phrases and things in there that may be included that wipe everything out, or they might not be included, and it's important to have them in there. So it creates these holes, like you mentioned. And I know this one probate attorney, she's a litigator, and she lives to find those holes. Like, it makes her excited to find those holes. And all it takes is one disgruntled family member or business partner or whatever to be upset that they didn't get this or that, or they needed to have more or whatever. And they find an attorney like this, and the two of them get together, and here's this hole, and it might have slipped through except for this disgruntled person. And now the hole becomes bigger and bigger, and it becomes this whole problem for everybody that's named in this, or maybe even the heirs that are not even on it. Maybe it throws the whole will out as an invalid will. Is that even a possibility?
To a certain extent. Here's the thing. A lot of wills have what we call no contest clauses, meaning that, hey, if you contest this will, you'll lose the right to what you're getting. And sometimes even your descendants will lose that right. A lot of people, when it comes down to, hey, I want to do it a certain way, and let's just use an example for purpose. You want to disinherit one of your children. You don't want anything going to them, and so you write something out and you put in like, I don't want to give it to little Johnny because he's a jerk. Well, this is public. This goes into the public domain, and it'll be sitting there, little Johnny the jerk. Well, little Johnny might not be too happy about that. Little Johnny has his own opinion of what's happening in his relationship, and
Right.
he may see it the other way. So he's not getting anything. And then on top of that, his name has been tarnished by his own family members, and you may fight that. He's got no real risk in this, minus maybe some court costs and lawyer fees. He can challenge this. He can challenge the will. He can challenge the estate, and it can create a big issue. I was told a long time ago, be very careful with what you put in a will because it is eternal. And speaking of the holes and things like that, if you choose to challenge a will, it can be quite a big ordeal. And so instead of disowning little Johnny, you come up with other ways to maybe situation better and prevent a challenge. And that's kind of why you go see somebody versus walking into Office Depot and just saying, I hate little Johnny. He's not getting anything. So,
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. As an objective party, you guys can temper what's put into a will so that it is more palatable to the people that may be on the receiving end of it. That's a good point.
It's very similar to don't ever send an email when you're angry. Don't
Yeah.
write your will when you're angry.
Yeah, that's probably a really good point.
Correct.
So what are some things that people can avoid by having a will in place?
So a lot of the purpose of having the will is for the transfer of your assets. Some assets will transfer through probate, others transfer outside. And you've mentioned businesses and things like that. Those are all their own separate entities. So they have succession plans. And you really don't bring those into the will. But take property, for example. If you have a will and you've done it right, you elect your executive comes in and handles the property. When you don't have a will and nobody really has written anything, you don't have a way of transferring this property, you then have to get the court involved and you have to bring people in that, hey, this was his property, these are his heirs, this is his executor, the whole process of affidavit of heirship. And that gets more expensive. Another thing that I always talk about on doing things right is just self-proving affidavits. Talk about making things so much easier when you have a notary with the witness's signatures at the end of the will, and simple things like that really help the process move forward. When you don't have a plan to it and you're just going to leave it out there, it can become expensive. When people don't have a will set up and they need probate, it's normally going to cost them more money.
The thing that I think about too is, and I didn't think about these things until I started reading what people go through and talking to people, but real life scenario can be super painful when it plays out when someone doesn't have a will. For instance, I'm thinking of a person, they have young children, they didn't have a will. They are living in a house that they qualified for because they both had jobs. So she's got mortgage payments, she's got car payments, she's got all that goes with that, insurance, and the kids are in school, just trying to figure out how to manage all of that. But then if there's not a will, and in this case there isn't, then the court has to go through all these steps to see who all the heirs are. It's not just her and her children anymore, because now without a will, his parents, if they're still alive, have a place in that. And the state wants to make sure that everybody, because he didn't name specifics in his will of who he wants his beneficiaries to be. Now his whole line is open up and any children they might have, it just gets so complicated. But in the meantime, the wife who has these young children is sitting there trying to figure out how to maintain an environment for them that they can adjust and transition in, and how is she supposed to grieve? And it just gets so complicated. And I really don't want the individual to get lost in all these scenarios that are theory when this is a real life happening right here in Harris County. And that's just tragic to me. And unfortunately, a lot of young people don't think they need a will, or they put it off for another day or whatever. And that's just one scenario of something that young woman is going through right now. And so having a will in place, I just want to say it every time, at least have a will in place. The directives and all that stuff is also important, in my opinion.
Right, and Sherri, let me add something to it. It doesn't always have to be a will. A certain type of truck, it's the plan. Having a plan in place is where you want to go, because you can deed homes to other people. But
That's
you're
true.
right. Texas is a community property state. So if you die and you have children outside of your own, say you're a blended family, it doesn't all automatically go to your wife. It is split up. And if this isn't planned for, it can create problems for people. And that's why in community property states, it's important to have a plan in place of, hey, what happens if you die? You're the breadwinner and I still owe a mortgage on this house. How do we set this up? And that's part of the plan. Part of the reason you go see somebody who does estate planning, who does these type of things, is because they've seen the scenarios where it goes wrong, and you plan around that so that it doesn't happen to the Mr. and Mrs. Smith this time.
Right. I like that. Just start with a plan and let your plan take you where it needs to go for this season in your life, because it can change as you get older, as other people come into your life, as you learn more, as you develop more, all those things. It's not set in stone. It doesn't have to be set in stone. So what's the most common question people ask you today as you're bridging this? It's like you're on two skis. You're bridging the financial planning world and the law world.
I get a different question from different people all the time. I think it's a common concern that most people have. And it is, am I set up? Is everything going to happen right? Are my accounts, do they go to probate? Will they go to my wife or to my children automatically? What's going to happen with my house? It's a slew of questions that really come in, and they're based upon the concern of, hey, I want to make sure that this moves easy. I don't want my family going through this pain of death that everybody's experiencing and having to try to figure out, okay, did dad leave a will? Did mom sign the deed properly? And so it really is, how do I get rid of these fears or these unknowns? How do I move forward so that my family will be taken care of?
Yeah. Those are great questions from people that sounds like they really have a heart for their loved ones and are responsible and want to do the right thing. So good on them. That's awesome. And is there a question that you wish people would ask more often?
There's a lot of questions that come down in that aspect. One of the things I think people need to ask more often is the simple question. And it comes back to what we were just talking about. The planning is, what happens today if I were to die? What happens? Right? Like, let's take that hypothetical and I go away. What happens to my wife? What happens to my children? What happens to my children's future of going to school at Harvard? How does everything evolve if I'm out of the picture unexpectedly? Because death is not something we as humans enjoy talking about. It's the thing that we never want to talk about. And because we never talk about it, we have situations that are really bad when it happens. And if you spend a little bit of time just asking that question of, hey, what will happen? I think it's not an uncomfortable thought of investing in the morbidity of our existence, but it's more along the lines of, will everybody be okay? And when you look at it that way, it's more of a, I'm doing it for them type situation. And I don't
Yeah,
have to.
right, right. We're not planning our death or how we're going to go. That would be morbid. What we're talking about is how we can make it easier for those that we leave behind and just tie up those loose ends so that it's neat and tidy. Human to human. There's somebody on the fence and they're just not sure. Maybe they're like me when I did not want to talk about this. I didn't want to think about end of life. I didn't want to think about me leaving my children and all of that. I just refused to talk about it. That was me. And then for some reason, a conversation like this, I started thinking what would happen to them. And the thought of leaving them under confusion and duress while still trying to live their life was motivating enough for me to put a plan together for myself, and eventually leads me to this silly podcast that I still can't believe I'm doing. So if we have listeners that are going to be on the fence, that are just, they don't have a will in place, they don't have a plan in place, and they're just on the fence. So Matt, human to human, what could you say to them that might encourage them to take the next step?
I think in this case, it's not just one statement. It's quite a few. And that's kind of where I've always gone is it's a conversation. You may not need my services. And if you don't, I'll tell you, but you may need them. And so it becomes, let's sit down and talk about what's going on in your life. And then we can say, hey, I'm going to go over there and transfer deed to somebody and you're fine. But it may be more complex and you may not be understanding things that need to take place. And most people, they don't like spending money on something they're not going to be around for. But when you look at it and you look at the way it is, you spend some money for an estate plan for what's going to happen. And you hope that, hey, everything works out smoothly. There are no issues, but there could be issues. And then somebody's going to have to handle that. When you don't have that plan and you just kind of let it go, you're saving a little bit of money right now in life, but your estate is going to have to pay somebody to come in here and fix it. So it may not always be a lawyer. It might be a title agency. It might be somebody who can do things where law's not involved, but it's still a complex ordeal. And that's kind of what we try to avoid is let's pay a little now so that it pays us dividends later in the future. It's that compounding interest later on, you reap the benefit of it.
Right, right. If you have a plan in place, chances are you're going to minimize your problems and that makes it easier for those that you leave behind.
They talk about that heavily in financial planning is you have a plan and in this plan, you've looked at what happens if the market comes down and you've seen in the past what happens when it's done this and how long it's taken to recover. And it helps with other things, not just, hey, you know, my emotional state of, hey, the market's come down, but it helps with the realization that there is an outside to this. There is a point where, you know, everything works and it's always worked in the past. This should recover and I just need to be patient.
And when it comes to probate, you can finish all that up and move on with your life. It doesn't have to go with you forever, but it is a season of time that can be unsettling and discouraging and downright maddening, depending on what all is going on. And the sooner we can wrap that up and close that chapter, the sooner you can get on to the rest of your life, whatever that might look like.
Correct. No, nobody wants to sit in a contested probate hearing
Right.
for weeks, months, and years, just
Right.
trying to get property distributed. I mean, you're dealing with the heartache of loss and the frustration of financial problems that are taking place. And it's just, who wants to do that?
Nobody.
That right there is one of the main reasons that you push. Hey, let's plan this. Let's have it to where this isn't going to happen, because at a certain point, you may just say, you know what, forget it. Give little Johnny what he wants and let's move on. And is that what you wanted to begin with? Well, again, you're not there. So
Right.
it's your family dealing with it.
Right. That's true. So, Matt, how do people reach you? How do you want them to find you?
Oh, you can always shoot me an email. It's matt@rmeredithlaw.com. Meredith is spelled MEREDITH. I have a website, rmeredithlaw.com, and the R is for Robert and Meredith. My telephone number, you can reach me directly, is 832-458-9706. And we can always talk from there.
That's awesome. I'll make sure that those are in the show notes. And then tell me about your consultations. Do you schedule those, or do you have a free consultation? How does that work?
Depending on what it is, if it's something where you're needing information, a lot of people want information, so they'll pay a lawyer and say, "Hey, give me this information." If it's like, yeah, we'll do an hour, we'll do however long you need and talk about it, and you pay for those services. But a lot of the consultations we don't charge for, but I don't charge for, because it's the fact finding and it's saying, okay, what's your situation? Break it all down for me so I can look at it. And then I'll tell you, okay, this is what you need, and this is what I'll do. So things like that, where it's more fact finding of, hey, what are you looking for? That we normally don't. If it's a specific thing like, hey, how do I go about doing this? Well, you get more advice, so we'll charge with that. But a lot of the stuff, it's a simple phone call, and let's see if we can help each other. Can we work together? And if not, I'll normally say, hey, I probably can't help you. But if I can, I'll say, hey, let's get together, maybe grab coffee, discuss what's going on and how we can work together and make this work for you.
Sure. Perfect. So pick up the phone or send an email and get the conversation started. That's my favorite thing.
Also on the website, I have a consultation form that you can send in. You can directly ask me what's going on. So that's on the website, an easy way to do it.
Okay, great. Good to know. Say, Matt, thanks so much for your time again. This has been really helpful and insightful. You've turned on some light bulbs in my head, even though we've talked several times before now. And I just really appreciate you. I appreciate you in our area and what you're doing for the people in our community. And just really appreciate you taking the time today to be on the show with me today.
Well, thank you very much. It's great that you're a voice for people who are going to need assistance with these things. So keep up the good work.
Okay. Thank you so much, Matt.
Okay.
That's all I have for now. New episodes of the Probate Podcast will come out on Thursdays. I also have a free public support group called Houston Probate Support on Facebook. You don't have to live in the greater Houston area to be a member, but I'd love to have you join me there. I'd love to have you join me on any of these platforms, including this podcast, and I'll share the links of where you can find me in the show notes below. I'm looking forward to us connecting. See you next time, and remember, you matter.